Hey, good morning, good late morning, everybody. I'm going to talk about the vision, the compelling vision for smart manufacturing from the voice of the industry. And basically, this is a body of work that's in process using the Executive Council. So, like all slides that you've seen, it's been mandatory for us to put John Dyke's picture on every slide, regardless if he's going to attend or not. So myself and Bart will be doing this section. So the context of what we're going to talk about in the next 15 minutes or so is really around positioning our smart manufacturing playbook that is in process of being authored by the Smart Manufacturing Executive Council. And you heard about this earlier, but really the spirit of this thing is that how can we, as an executive council, as 30 plus national leaders in organizations, put together the what must be true story for smart manufacturing to actually be adopted, to be executed, and to be accelerated across the nation. And so what's been done is we met yesterday, and we've been refining kind of the high points of not only a vision statement about what must be true and what attributes must happen, as well as the what must be true on these different personas that John talked about earlier. And so let's kind of start this discussion. When you look at the landscape that we're all working in, none of this should be new news to anybody. But these kind of, this list of things that are up here, and I'll talk briefly about each one, are really kind of the grand challenges, or some would say problems of the day. So you think about what's going on with the workforce. We heard earlier from NIST and MEP, what was it, 4 million jobs gap that we have. We have scarcity of just the actual resource itself, but the skills that the resources represent. We've now seen this changing customer behavior and expectations around, when you talk to a plant manager, what does every plant manager want? Make one thing and make a lot of it. How does that match with consumer expectations? Does everyone want a black car or Cheerios with no Honey Nut Cheerios or no flavoring? So this topic of changing behavior and what customers expect, this kind of one-to-one customization is really changing manufacturing. And then in previous presentations, John's presented a number of U.S. slides, federal government slides, that show the declining or flattening of productivity. And so when we think about smart manufacturing, we think about the hope for this next generation productivity and kind of how we break through. So we'll briefly talk about that. We've all experienced climate disruptions and the unsteadiness of our own environment and how it can knock out manufacturing at a heartbeat when the storm comes through or something happens. The technology advances, we're hearing about that when we're here at the conference. We don't expect any slowdown or change in pace on technology advances. And so, the very first system that you put in is as soon as you put it in, do you have technical debt and is it obsolete? Or do you have a platform that can grow? So that's obviously a driver to try to understand this playbook. And then geopolitical pressures, who knows where pressures between countries are going to break out, tariffs are going to happen, this unsteadiness of what's going on in a global economy, that's just a fact of life. We've all experienced supply chain challenges with pandemics, and oddly enough, I would suggest that many of us still haven't changed enough to learn from the pandemic to not keep repeating the same scenarios that we've gone through before. And lastly, and that was talked about with this partnership between SESME and Symantec, the whole issue of cybersecurity. And it doesn't get any easier, right? So this set of grand challenges that we face, you'd go, well, what am I going to do with that? is this Debbie Downer time and I'm just whining about the ecosystem that we've got headwinds against? Or how can we turn headwinds into tailwinds and actually move this along? So Bart?
Thank you, Jim. Do you hear me well? So, as you heard from Jim, and I think it should be no surprise, right? Manufacturing is clearly challenged, and supply chains as a whole are challenged by this trend and drivers that Jim has been talking about. And I think a lot of you experience one or more of these things every day. So it's clearly a new world. It's a more dynamic and complex world within us, which demand action. And so for us, manufacturing and supply chain, it is very critical we adapt our mindsets, our operating models to meet these new realities and to continue to fulfill the expectations that the stakeholders have from us. And by the way, these expectations are also continuously rising. So continuous rising expectations and operating in an environment that is more complex and more challenging to deliver on that. Now, we're going to talk about that in more detail later. First, what I want to highlight to you is a very exciting opportunity for manufacturing and supply chains. I think there's no better time than today than now to be in manufacturing and supply chains. And the why is on the slide. Manufacturing has historically been, I would say, dealt with as a cost center, right? We've been viewed as a cost center. We were taken for granted. We were there to manufacture and ship products to customers. The pandemic clearly renewed its importance and its reputation. And now we can build on that momentum. We can leverage that momentum with smart manufacturing. Smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, it's all the same thing, can enable us to go beyond the traditional cost improvements and productivity improvements, and can enable us as manufacturing and supply chain to drive very differentiating business and customer outcomes. Examples I'm referring to, for example, accelerated launch of new products and time to market. We can directly drive profitability and cash flow improvements with technology. We can significantly increase agility, flexibility, resilience, and sustainability. We can be at the forefront of personalized solutions and products. So in doing so, manufacturing and supply chains can really become equal business partners at the table with commercial and R&D. You could say even more, we can become a competitive advantage for the business. And I would say this is an inflection point for manufacturing, and it is very similar to what IT has gone through 10, 15 years ago, right? They went through a similar transformation. So this is our big transformation, this is our moment, and it's a huge opportunity. Let me illustrate what I'm talking about with a specific example. Orthopedics, right? In the orthopedic business, the surgeons typically select a number of sets of implants, a knee, a hip, a shoulder, and the related instruments the surgeon will need to perform the surgery. Why is that a number of sets? Because they have an idea what the patient needs, but they take a smaller and a larger set to be sure they have all what they need to execute the surgery successfully. You can imagine this results in a very complicated supply chain, a lot of inventory, and you can imagine also the material handling in hospitals is very challenging. With 3D printing, we can create a personalized implant for that individual patient, fit for them, based on their individual CT scan. The vision, the ambition is, we are not there yet. There are examples, but not really fully deployed, is that we do that printing at the point of consumption, at the point of use, so in the hospital. So we can imagine this greatly simplifies the supply chain for the manufacturer, greatly simplifies the logistics for the hospitals, but even more important, it also brings a lot of benefits to the patient. A much better experience before, during, and after the surgery, much more effective surgeries, outcomes, and by the way, there is really a huge chance on avoiding and reducing the need, the potential need for repeat surgeries, which happen quite often today. So this shift from a cost center to a business partner to a competitive advantage is huge. It's not an evolution. I talked about the inflection point. We call it a transformation, and we call it a reinvention of manufacturing. Now, supply chain and manufacturing leaders must take ownership for this transition. And I would say even more, it's an obligation that we have to make this happen, because the US economy and a lot of people depend on it. Let's now talk about what that reinvention means from a mindset and operating model perspective. And Jim will talk about the mindset component of that.
Yeah, so let's put some meat on the bones and look at what this future state really looks like when we think about reinvention. Because the word reinvention, that word's overused, right? And people can't put meat on that bones to understand what it is. So what we're really trying to do is to say, okay, let's start with, we have 4 different categories that we're going to talk about: mindset, operating model, people, and technology. So let's start with mindset. Today, if you follow that slide around manufacturing being seen as a cost center, you kind of feel this today, and hopefully you can nod your heads around this and go, yeah, that's me. I can see myself in that equation. You have a victim mindset, right? Because where does the rubber hit the road? The rubber hits the road at the factory. So any of the mistakes on planning, scheduling, resourcing, materials, labor, all of that stuff has to be dealt with and managed in chaos by the factory to pull the rabbit out of the hat to actually deliver on-time quality product. So they kind of have this, you know, I'm always the victim in here. And so when you see the victim, you see hero mentality as well. Pulling the rabbit out of the hat, I'm a hero. This shift that we just got done talking about, what's the shift going on here? The shift is to move to this driver of capability, the driver of business outcomes, and an enabler of a different future. So instead of being a victim, I'm actually proactive and creating opportunities. You see an operational focus today. In the future, people have used different words for this, but this customer obsession, this concept of you're not making one thing for everybody, you're making one thing for a body. The eaches concept versus the multiple concepts, and being highly reactive to that, Exactly opposite of what manufacturers want to hear, but we have to figure out how to make that true. Mm-hmm. Reacting and responding, that's the victim mentality and playing hero every day. Moving to proactive and anticipatory, so having an eye on the prize, having an eye on supply and demand, as an example. And then the last one, safety, cost, and quality is table stakes for manufacturing. Add on to that, we also have to be resilient and agile. We're not giving up on safety, cost, and quality, but we added more to the table. So when Lisa talked about her journey and about the complexity, you can see this complexity. But this really represents the shift that we need to make to go from cost center to enabler. Okay.
Okay. So the next one is operating model and people. So operating model, we all experience that new business and operating models are emerging, and they turn supply chains into interconnected networks versus linear supply chains based on physical flow. Now, in a lot of cases, these new models are driven by technology innovation. If I go back to the 3D printing example in orthopedics I gave you, you can imagine that this leads to a completely different way of working between the manufacturer, the hospitals, the surgeons, the providers, etc. So these interconnected networks are actually holistic collaborative ecosystems, including manufacturers, suppliers, tech providers, machine builders, customers, and other stakeholders. Now, with that change, manufacturing and supply chain leaders need to act as, I call it, end-to-end orchestrators, focusing on holistic collaboration, on trust building across that network, that ecosystem. And when we talk about the network ecosystem, and doing that versus merely managing their own operations and functions. Now, for that ecosystem, there is that broad external ecosystem, but we should never forget the internal collaboration between functions remains very important, and that should also be more directly driven by manufacturing and supply chain leaders versus leaving every function on its own to talk to each other. What I think you also realize and see happening is with the emergence of these new models, in a lot of cases, that implies organizational design changes. So a lot of that results in different organizational models as well. Then if we kind of on the bridge, the last one there is the bridge to the people part, a shift from a primarily product and process focus, how we have been living in manufacturing for the last decades, to a more employee-centric approach is very critical to make these technology transformations, smart manufacturing, successful. So going digital alone in itself is not enough, right? It's all about people, we know it. People make the difference. So we need to amplify more that focus on people, on our workforce. So this means that for smart manufacturing technology innovation, the focus is to enhance the workforce experience and how we can meet their needs. And this has a couple of requirements. I think the first one, which we should never forget, is the basics, right? The workforce will always want to feel rewarded, valued, and impactful. We should never forget that. We should never get our eyes off that ball. But yes, expectations are changing. The younger generations, I would say, prioritize things like purpose-driven work environments, sustainability, work-life balance, health and wellness. They want to be empowered. So they don't have the mindset anymore like in the past of it's just a job, right, that we do. They had a bigger aspiration with their work. And we need to adapt to that. Also, we really need to invest more in the growth of our people and the upskilling to boost engagement, but also, as Jim referred to these skill gaps in the beginning, to close those skill gaps, because we have huge skill gaps and they can only get larger with technology evolving. In that regard, we can leverage technology and use technology to really accelerate the time to competency, and hopefully we get that to close to zero for at least basic competencies. Also, in this technology era, training and education are not, let's say, time points. They are a continuum. Learning is a continuous journey, and that's why we talk about learning journeys. And by the way, the learning journeys need to be individualized for every worker, because they're different. And lastly, we really have to use technology to simplify the life of our workforce and make it more interesting. And here there's a lot of things we can do, right? I'll give a couple of examples. The first one is we need to make the access to data and information and knowledge easier for the workforce so they can get to answers faster, so that we can get to better informed decision making. And here, you know, we have the ChatGPTs, the Gen AIs, etc., right? The second one, which is also very important, is this blurring human-machine interfaces. That makes, nowadays with technology, the interaction and the collaboration between humans and machines much more seamless. And here we know examples, smart workstations, there is cobots, collaborative robots, we have more intuitive user interface and HMIs, AR, VR for remote maintenance, etc. The next one is automation of repetitive tasks. To really free up the workforce for more complex work, for more interesting work, and also give them the room to be more focused on outcomes, expand their responsibilities versus being individual task-oriented. And lastly, another important lever we can pull is building digital augmented and connected workforce to improve efficiencies, to improve communication, engagement, agility of the workforce. And here we have the myriad of solutions, right? Augmented reality, digital communication platforms, data science and analytics, etc.
Okay.
And I'll hand it back to Jim.
And the last element of this shift for reinvention is around technology. And I think in the last segment with Jonathan and John, you guys did a fabulous job on that. this functional solutions, disconnected systems, data models per solution is what you talked about in silos. And I didn't know how polite this audience was when you said, do we want to do that? I was ready to stand up and say, no, hell no, we don't want to do that, right? We need to get to this thing that Jonathan talked about, open and interoperable systems, common and standard data platforms, and of course, all being secure. Is that easy? No, I mean, there's a long journey. Everyone's been on it for multiple years. But well said by Jonathan, we have to get there. This shift that we're making, this shift that is next generation capabilities and manufacturing competitiveness, it's not a question of do we want to do that? We have to do this. And this is about bringing all of us in. And that's why I'm so happy to be sitting here talking about this shift and talking about these themes that must be true. And the very next step is who's got our back is Executive Council with 32 plus major world-class companies that are also standing up and saying, this is what we believe in. We believe that these problems, these themes have to shift and answer these questions. And that's what's coming up next. So hang on for this whole session of what must be true in detail beyond this.
That's right, thank you. Every time I see this presentation, I take something new and at a deeper level from it. So I really appreciate that introduction. And I'm excited to welcome Matt Littlefield up to our stage to present this point of view of the broader manufacturing sector. So, and our Smart Manufacturing Executive Council. Where is Matt?
Right behind you.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jim. Thank you to SESME. L&S Research is incredibly proud and privileged to partner with SESME, both around this event as well as the larger playbook that we're going to be sharing here today. So we're also very excited about SESME 2.0 and what was painted as a vision earlier this morning, which was scaling all the work that's been done over the past 7 years. We think it's incredibly important. And I wanted to spend just a few minutes sharing why we think it's so important and help to build the case for why now when it comes to scaling smart manufacturing. So we call this at L&S Research the degrading base case. And I'm here to say a lot of the anecdotes, a lot of the articles that you're reading about the degradation of performance in manufacturing are real when you look at the data. And so 2020 was a challenging year for many, many reasons, and we all lived through it. But it was actually a banner year in manufacturing. We hit records in production. We were focused. We delivered. But since that time, performance has slowly been degrading. So if you look at safety, and in particular SIFs, since 2020, 2021 was the first year that serious incidents and fatalities in the OSHA data started to tick up. It had been on a downward trend for 30 years. And so why did that happen and what can we do about it? And unfortunately, it's continued to tick up for the last 3 years. So that was sort of the start in the cracks of the foundation. If you go to 2022 and start thinking about quality, and if you aggregate recall data across all major categories in the US, so this is across life sciences and the FDA, it's across automotive, it's across consumer products, quality started ticking up in the wrong direction for the first time. Then if you take the third leg of that stool, which Jim was talking about earlier, right, the table stakes, the safety, the quality, and the cost and productivity, this is our industrial productivity index, which had been about flat in that 2016 to 2020 timeframe. 2021, great year in terms of productivity growth. 2022, another great year in terms of productivity growth. 2023, we gave it back. We gave almost half of that productivity growth back. And so we're gonna have to ask ourselves, as 2024 comes to a close here and we get ready for 2025, are the cuts that we made, are the reorganizations that we did, are they going to be delivering benefits, or were they just cost cuts? And so that's where we are in terms of manufacturing and performance over the last 3 years. And so we do believe 2024 and 2025 are inflection points. We do think we need a new path forward. We think this is the path forward to smart manufacturing. LNS is very happy to contribute both our time and research to this cause. But what's the root cause of that degrading performance? And there are many, but we think in particular it's the workforce. And when we look at across the companies that we work with, what does the typical workforce look like in one of their facilities, and how has it changed? When you look at tenure, when you look at time and position, when you look at the average retention rates of new employees, it has shifted dramatically. And so we believe manufacturers have to accept the fact that that 30-year vet is not coming back, the workforce of 2019 is not coming back, and the performance that they drove is not coming back either. So I think when you talk to CFOs, and you look at the OpEx and CapEx budgeting process at a lot of manufacturers, they think continuous improvement is free. They think that the 1% to 2% improvements we got every year for a lot of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s will continue. And our base case is it won't continue. If you just keep that investment the same, or even match it to inflation, you're probably going to degrade in performance and continue to degrade in performance, because if you're delivering the same set of inputs, the same people and process and technology capabilities that you delivered to a workforce that had an experience of 20 years on average, to now a workforce that has an experience of 3 years on average, and think you're going to get the same results, in most cases you're not. And so that, I think, is hopefully setting the stage for everything that the Executive Council is working on. The Executive Council has been talked about a lot today, but I love the way John mentions it and describes it. It is the voice of manufacturing. It's a great group of leaders. My interactions with this group, they are not a know-it-all organization. They are a learn-it-all organization. They want to take input. They want to share their expertise. And that's what hopefully we're going to share here today with everybody. And so we'll be talking about the playbook. We'll be also talking about the point of view that was produced prior to this playbook. But this is really, we'll go through the 6 areas that we think manufacturers can use to drive change across their organizations. So to further set the stage and share with us the work that this council has done, Andrew Ellis, VP Global Portfolio Engineering for Rockwell Automation and Sesame Board Director.
There we go. Good morning. Welcome. Oh, thank you. Got it. My name's Andrew Ellis, part of Rockwell Automation and a very proud member of the Sesame Board. I thought by way of introduction, I'm going to give you a kind of a brief history, and I'll stick with brief for me just to introduce who I am. I started studying engineering and physics at university, which is why I'm so excited that the backdrop to this event for Sesame is right here at Oak Ridge National Laboratories, where such incredible science and innovation has taken place. And if you haven't taken the tour, I really encourage you to do it. If you haven't done it this time, maybe next time you do it. I started my career as a process control engineer, so building P&ID diagrams, writing PLC code, building HMIs, installing historians, really building automation systems. And it was for me, where I developed a real passion for technology, and more importantly, how technology can solve problems for customers and for business outcomes. I left that business, started a systems integration business, because I always said I'd never liked working for someone else. I wanted to work for myself. And for those that have got their own business, you realize the challenges that come with that, but I loved it. I turned that business into a product business where we built an enterprise manufacturing intelligence software solution that then got purchased by Rockwell Automation, which is why I'm here today. For Rockwell, for the past 16 years, I have been learning their portfolio, and really I should say our portfolio. They have 300,000 SKUs, so it's taken me this long. And also our partner technology, so think Fanuc, Anderson Hauser, Cisco, Microsoft, and technology in general, such that I at least could present solutions and architectures to continue to help customers down their journey. So yes, I think Jonathan said it yesterday, nerd. I'm not going to say nerd. I'm going to say technology enthusiast is who I am. And I think it aligns very well with the mission and direction for SESME. So let's start. I get the honor of presenting this report that was published about a year ago by the National Academies called Options for a National Plan for Smart Manufacturing. And it was developed by the National Academies. It was sponsored by the DOE and included some key members of SESME to provide direction. And I'm proud to say Blake Moret, our CEO, was one of the members on that committee. And what this report does is really provide a point of view, primarily for policymakers, but I would encourage everyone to read it, at least the first few pages, to develop a plan on how to improve productivity, efficiency, and sustainability for US manufacturers. And what I want to do today, there's 5 primary recommendations that came out of this. I want to introduce those to you if you haven't seen them before. For those that you've seen them, I think they're going to resonate with you. But then I think more importantly, I'm going to go back and change and take a look at how Rockwell's customers, because we do a survey, how the 5 recommendations align extremely well to what we see in the market. I think when I'm done, we're going to have Matt Littlefield come back up with our exec council, and I think they're going to even expound more on these technologies and capabilities. So let's take a look at these 5. And again, right in your face, it says for federal policymakers, but I think you're going to see these are things that we all need and can align to. Number 1 is really about education and workforce development. And this isn't just universities and colleges for early career and polytechniques. It's about those employees, as we adopt technologies, need to go back and learn more about smart manufacturing technology. So it's the full gamut of education. Like, to me, I'm a believer that learning should be a lifelong task. Number 2, it's really about the cyber interstate. And this isn't just, how do I secure our equipment and our facilities, but it's about how do we safely and securely transact data to third-party systems outside of the 4 walls of our factories. Number 3, case data banks. So this would be in conjunction with NIST, the Department of Defense, where we would develop these case data banks, CASE standing for calibration, autonomy, security, and evaluation, with a purpose of being able to measure and guide the next generation of smart manufacturing architectures. And then 4th, technology, a bit of a passion probably for everyone in the room here, but it's really about funding programs and consortia to help identify those key technologies at the intersection of industry and manufacturing processes, which ones drive the greatest return on investment across our complete landscape. And then finally, measuring sustainability. This is all about, as we adopt smart manufacturing, let's make sure that it's also solving the sustainability problem such that we leave the planet in a better place than we found it. So now let me kind of transact a little bit, or transition to, so those are the 5 recommendations that came out of that report. And now let me kind of give you what does Rockwell Automation customers, which many are in this room, would kind of how they replied. So every year we do the State of Smart Manufacturing report, where we take a look and ask, how are you adopting smart manufacturing? And I want to show you how it aligns to what we're seeing, what the 5 recommendations are. So skills gap, labor shortage, we heard that today. There's a quote from, not a quote, but a stat from the Bureau of Labor that says 2.7 million baby boomers will retire this year. I think it's fantastic people are retiring. The challenge is those 2.7 million people are leaving with knowledge, skill, and experience. And when we asked our customers, how are they going to address the skills gap and labor shortage? Of course, the number 1 answer is we're going to add more automation. Automation solves the feet and hands of kind of the operating line, but they're also going to adapt a whole bunch of other technologies, number 2 being artificial intelligence, and that's going to help address the missing knowledge that's leaving the workforce. But the key point I want to make here is that as you adopt technology, as you add technology, you have to have the investment in education and workforce that comes with it. These two things are, you can't have these things separate. So this aligns to the first topic. Another question we asked our customers was, how well are they using the data they currently already capture? And you probably could guess, but 44% only said they're using it wisely, giving a 56% gap of there's additional value here that aligns to some of the other opportunities that we've seen. And then we asked, how many customers are either already adopting AI or will in the next 12 months? 85% said they already are or will. There is a race to capitalize on AI and technologies. And it's not just AI. It's robotics, it's cobotics, it's machine learning. There's a number of technologies that people are racing towards. So this aligns to item number 4. So in summary here, the goal of this report was to raise the opportunities that smart manufacturing provides. It's really about developing an education and training system. It's about how do we secure our facilities and secure transactions outside of our facilities. How do we identify those technologies that give us the greatest impact and return on investment? And then finally, let's make sure that we're also addressing the sustainability goals. As we add smart manufacturing, we're leaving this planet better than we found it. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Matt and say thank you very much.
Great job. Thank you, Andrew. And with that, I'd like to welcome up to the stage 6 representatives from the Smart Manufacturing Executive Council. So we have Jeff Abell, Global Director and R&D from GM. We have Larry Megan, Head of Digital from Baldwin Richardson's Foods. We have Brenden Mullins, Vice President, Global Manufacturing Engineering from ResMed. We have Rick Van Dyke, Senior Director of Supply Chain from PepsiCo. We have Christopher Micena, former Senior Director of Innovation from Nestle Purina. And we have Tony Huffman, Enterprise Architect Strategist from Koch. All right, so each of these representatives will spend a few minutes to talk through one of the 6 areas of the playbook, and we will start with Jeff Abell.
Thanks, Matt. And I want to thank John and his team in Oak Ridge for having us here for this conversation. It's really a great event. So this first topic around manufacturing leadership, this is really a conversation about who we need to partner with as technologists to really make smart manufacturing happen. Very likely all of us in here work for somebody, and very likely all of us in here manage up really well. And so this is an opportunity to really tell people when we hear those magic words, that smart manufacturing stuff sounds like a really good idea. How can I help? What do I need to do? This is really what we need manufacturing leadership to do. So the first thing is to really help define a strategy, a moonshot strategy that really defines how smart manufacturing will transform the organization and really begin to make manufacturing into a competitive advantage. This strategy needs to be compelling, specific, and relatable. It needs to be understandable to everybody. And it really needs to point towards how this can make manufacturing a competitive advantage. We also need an execution plan with tangible milestones, not just so that we can track things and track a plan, but so that we can celebrate successes and pivot when necessary. Stuff happens, and so we're going to have to be able to modify what we're doing. And so having those milestones is really, really important. The second point is setting up the organization for success. And this is really aligning the entire organization, not just the technology enthusiasts that, like we heard about a second ago. So this isn't just for the engineers or the operations people or IT. This has to include finance. It has to include planning. It has to include marketing. It has to include the entire organization so that they understand how this is going to transform the organization. We need this leader to help us define and prioritize relevant KPIs, not only for this strategy, but how they align with the organizational KPIs. to make sure that we're asking the right questions and moving in the right direction as a team. And then maybe the most important thing up here is to assign an empowered leader to really head up this charge, preferably on that person's staff, so that the escalation path is much shorter than burying somebody down in the organization. This empowered leader needs to be visible, and they need to be able to gather the resources that they need to really make this happen. And the last point is really around culture. We need this leader to be able to walk the talk and become an enabler for the implementation of smart manufacturing. They need to be a driver, and they need to be able to become part of the journey, not just an overseer, so to speak. One of the hardest things on this chart is the realization that they are going to have to learn about the technology and be able to speak the language. They need to be able to explain the benefits and the strategy to their board of directors, because likely an initiative as large as a smart manufacturing initiative is going to rise to the level of gathering the attention of the board. So that person is really going to have to be able to walk the talk and talk the talk. They need to be accountable for the success or failure of this initiative. They also need to make their team accountable for the success or failure of this initiative. And they also need to incentivize appropriately so that people understand how important this is for the organization. And maybe the easiest thing for this leader is going to be assigning the resources. Once the rest of points 1, 2, and 3 are in place, assigning the resources is going to be natural, and everybody is going to want to really get engaged. So in summary, what we're asking this leader to do is to be present and be engaged in the journey, help define the strategy, help set up the organization for success, and set the culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. No small task there finding those leaders, but I know a few that are up for it. So, Larry Megan.
Thanks, Matt, and it's really an honor to be able to talk about this subject, which I know is near and dear to everybody's heart. So, quickly, by a show of hands, raise your hand if you believe your organization has the whole talent pipeline nailed. Everything from finding the right people, to hiring them, to recruiting them, to developing. Who's got it? Raise your hand, please. Anybody? Right? Mark, kind of wishy-washy, maybe, right? Because, look, the truth is the opposite, right? Most leaders look at it the opposite way. One of their big things that it's keeping them up at night is, how am I going to find the people I need? How am I going to develop them? How are we going to replace them as they change, right? That is a huge problem for everybody, and that's why it's so critical to what we're doing here. And so one step simply is everybody in this room has a responsibility to better market why this is important. We all know that smart manufacturing is important. We all know that it brings great opportunities. We know that those are exciting opportunities for technologists. We also know that it's critical to both the national economy and national security. I don't have to tell you that. Do your spouses know that? Does your brother and sister know that? Do your neighbors know that? More importantly, do the parents of students, do the teachers, do the guidance counselors, do they know that? So what are we going to do nationally to build the pipeline to get to the 4 million employees that Jyoti talked about earlier today, right? How are we going to get there? And then beyond that, when you look at your own company, we all talk about people being our most important asset. But look at your processes, look at your systems, look at your organizational charts, look at your culture, and does that really resonate in your organization? In some it does, maybe in some it doesn't. But think about really hard, are we a people-first culture? Because at the end of the day, manufacturing is not competing against other manufacturers for talent. We're competing against the Amazon warehouse. We're competing against Google, we're competing against a lot of different companies out there, and how are we going to make manufacturers employers of choice, right? Number two, back to what was said earlier, even with all of that, we know that turnover is a fact of life. As Matt said, we know we can no longer rely on the 30-year employee, the 30-year expert to be able to get stuff done. So once we get people in the front door, do we have, one, an efficient ecosystem, educational ecosystem that tells us as employers that they come with a certain level of capability, both technical and non-technical. So the things that Conrad talked about around, certifications and doing that more broadly, and not just having a bunch of disparate activities going across all different colleges and community colleges and workforce development centers, but having some consistency of that. So that gives me as an employer some confidence we know what we're getting as students. That is critically important. And then how can we use technology? How can we use systems? How can we use processes to, once they come in the door, we need to get them ramped up. If it used to take 5 years, we need to get ramped up in 2 years. If it takes 6 months, we need to get them ramped up in 3 months, right? How do we really streamline the process? How do we use modern capabilities? I don't care if it's AI, augmented reality, all those kinds of things. How do we use that technology as an enabler to get people up to speed really fast? And finally, once we have them, once they're on board, do we really have a culture within our organization that really enables continuous learning at all levels of the organization? So you may be thinking about the folks on the factory floor, but we're talking about folks on the factory floor all the way through the executive level, right? And so have we created a culture? Have we created, again, the processes, the systems, the organization that not only are we providing the people that the tools that they need for continuous learning, but are we providing them the space to do that? Because that, more often than not, is the hard part. It sounds like a good idea, but we got product to get out the door today and tomorrow, and it would be great if we could do more training, but we don't have the time to do that. So how are we really building those systems for the future? And as I said, it's not just for the frontline employees. In our organization, I look at my peers at the executive table. So who's our head of manufacturing, of supply chain, of HR, of finance? I want each of them to be the chief digital officer of their organization. And so what can we do to enable them with the ability to do that? Thanks.
See if this works. Larry, thank you for the energy and enthusiasm there. Now we have Brenden Mullins to talk about supply chain ecosystem.
Thanks very much. You see, the topic here is supply chain ecosystem, and it's deliberately a very broad topic, and it's been intentionally so, because when you think about it, maybe 80% of the value that we create and deliver is created outside of our four walls with our supply chain partners, be they material suppliers, component suppliers, logistics partners, our distributors. So if we're going to get access to data to drive a competitive business, maybe 80% of it is beyond us. So we need to bring that into an ecosystem, because the value in data is in the collective, particularly when you look at trying to apply AI to get insights and improve our businesses. So we need to look far beyond our four walls. That's maybe the main theme of what this slide's about. We've put that it's, actually I wanted to just mention, without being scripted, Yotti, before, when she was with John on the stage before the break, said that the large manufacturers are going to need to bring along with them the small manufacturers. And we'd put supply chain partners, need to bring them along. To do that, we're going to have to meet them where they are, because they're going to be in very different stages in terms of technology and readiness to participate with us. But if we don't pursue that, we're not mindful about that, we won't bring them into that data ecosystem, and we won't get to where we want to get to in terms of competitiveness and the leverage of data. We put three main themes here, and the first one is to have a mindset to really partner for success. And it's got to be based on trust. It's got to be based on trust, but also based on seeking value, not just for ourselves, but for the collective, for the stakeholders involved in that supply chain. And to do that, we're going to need to co-invest in the systems we use to create that data. I'm going to come back to that point at the end. Then we want to, there's a lot of data out there, but we've got to be clear on what are the measures for success within our businesses, within our use cases. And it might be delivery performance, it could be product quality, it could be visibility and transparency. We're probably all after that. We're definitely going to be all after sustainability. So we've got to be clear on what those measures are and make sure we can get access to that data to be able, well, the contextualised data, to be able to get the insights that we want. And the last one is that we probably do a little bit of this, or we do a little bit of this in a digital way currently, but we've got to really amp that up. There's really no place for paper. If you project yourself forward into your supply chain, into your business, it's really hard to think that it could be based on people writing things on paper and then entering into a spreadsheet and then transmitting it to us. We just won't cut it when we're after timely access to data. So we're going to be looking for timely and really accurate data to support what we've said in the previous dimension, number 2, the measures we need for success. And then we do speak about connected systems and processes. And that's with, as was noted in the team yesterday, it's really for bi-directional exchange of data. Again, recognising this is for the value for the ecosystem, the supply chain ecosystem, not just for us. One thing we're going to have to be mindful, though, is that our suppliers are going to have 20, 30, 40 other customers coming to them saying, we want you to give us data and log into our systems. That's not going to really work at scale. So it's a good thing a group like SESME is talking about open and interoperable systems, and we'd be set up to be able to have efficient exchange of data. And it's a very small bridge to cross when you think that in a connected world and with open and interoperable systems, it's a very small bridge to cross. Do you think that if we're deliberate about it, we can end up in a position where we build a supply chain data ecosystem for the benefit of certainly us, but all participants in that supply chain ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenden. I particularly like your thoughts on trust and shared benefits across the supply chain. All right, next up, we have Rick Van Dyke to talk about machine builders. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, as we've been talking about the manufacturing space, of course, what's a big trend is we're heading a lot more towards automation. So it's a lot more equipment technology versus all manual processes. So as we talk about those measures of success, you know, it's going to start in a lot of cases with the automation, which is the equipment that we get from the machine builders. So it's going to be very important. And historically, you know, machine builders kind of get caught up maybe in their piece that they're doing and their just little area of the machine itself. But in order for us to really drive smart manufacturing, we're going to have start, you know, kind of with the machines and the technology and having a better context and understanding by them about what is the purpose of that machine in the line, in the plant, in the supply chain, in the greater measures that we're looking after. So that's where a key, you know, first step point is that as they're designing their machine, they're having an understanding and a concept of, you know, a data model that's required, you know, to run and maintain and optimize that machine. So it's in context of that. And so they, you know, we're looking for them to be able to really partner with the, you know, the smart manufacturing platform standards to be able to enable that. So now it's, you know, it's in context of what it's doing on the machine land and also in the overall supply chain. And also included in that, you know, we want to be able to make sure that we have the digital information about the machine, you know, around to be able to maintain it, drawings or whatever the best practices are. So that's the intelligence, operational intelligence and maintenance intelligence that's required, that needs to go along with the people aspect that we're talking about to be successful, you know, with the machines that we put in. So the next big thing then on that to help be another foundation, but beyond the model, is that we've got these common connectors that we can connect. The machines can connect externally, whether they're, you know, kind of into the greater operation systems or they're upstream and downstream within the line. Those will be the enablers where we have that open and secure connections that will make that machine to be not just its own machine, but an instrument for the whole operations and supply chain. So, and that'll be a big enabler for the smart manufacturing platform. And we'll also need our machine builders to, in some cases, there might be multiple ones that are coming together and making up an overall operation. So we need them to have a line and system view standpoint, you know, on how they work in the ecosystem with the upstream and downstream equipment or whatever the processes that you may have in your manufacturing system. And then, you know, with that understanding that they've gained and that kind of foundational platforms, we're really going to be able to have the machine builders to have a much greater understanding of how their machines are used in operations. And so, we'll want to make sure we have access to all that digital information, to help the operations. And also, since that's already the data is already in context and now available at the machine level and also up to the enterprise, it's going to enable, a true digital twin and machine learning and AI kind of technologies to help bring things together, whether it's how the machine's working that's not understood, or it's bringing the people, engaged with it so that their experience can be, particularly the younger generation that's used to kind of working off their iPhone and just a video, or it just kind of gives them the answer. We'll need this kind of setup to be able to put together the knowledge information with what's going on with the machine to be able to help, them to kind of step them through to how to solve the problem. And we also see this as an opportunity, like a little sell point to the machine builders, that, as they're that capable with their equipment, it could enable more options where they may lease their machine, kind of based on performance versus just a capital buy approach. As a potential kind of, business model for the machine builders. And then the part that we're needing, the other part is to bring it all together, is to really just have that simple user interface for the operations and have it be easy to use, intuitive, and also open so that it can bring together all those things that I was talking about from a machine and operation standpoint, and also have, in order to do that, we'll need them to not just be thinking myopically with, this is all I need to push the button for the machine to run, but it fits into a greater, operations in line. So all those things that we were talking about can really come together. So that's kind of where we start from the machine builders.
Thank you, Rick. I'm particularly proud of the team and how they stayed value-focused and practical, and I don't think we mentioned the term industrial metaverse once with that session, so well done. All right, Christopher.
Thanks. I want to address one thing on here. It says former senior director of Nestle Purina. I think this is relevant to the conversation, is I felt so passionately about the Sesame vision and a lot of the principles that they stand for that I thought I could move a little bit faster than within a 300,000 person organization, be it Nestle, and go kind of put my money where my mouth is. So you'll see the last bullet point there is skin in the game. I put some skin in the game. I now work for a small software company that produces advanced warehousing software that is very operator and human-centric. And as the head of product now for that company, I want that to be interoperable. So with all of that said, as kind of background context as to why I'm up here, I agreed to do this panel before I made the jump, which was not even 2 months ago. Here I am, so thank you. Manufacturing owns the strategy. I think as you're engaging with consultants and systems integrators and service providers, it is important that you, as the manufacturer, are engaging with them, but you own the strategy. It's your company. It's your vision. What do you want this to do? But as a function of that, there should be some upfront diagnostics and opportunity assessment that you do together with whoever you choose to bring in to help you kind of gain a competitive advantage on what it is that your goals are. Where are your gaps? You're maybe one company, maybe you've worked for 2 or 3 or 4 companies prior to that, but consultants and service providers typically have a lot more experience. They've done dozens, even hundreds of companies that they can kind of pool that experience and help you kind of assess where your gaps are and where some opportunities for improvement are. But they need to have some skin in the game in that. And how does that look? To be determined. One of the points on number 2 here is transparency and incentives and ROI. So one of the successful methods that we've used in the past is the incentivization or your cost structure that you put together with these consultants and systems providers. They don't get paid 100% if they don't help deliver what they said they're going to deliver. So there should be something kind of baked in there that you have that shared vision. You're in it together. It is built on trust. So whatever it takes to get to trust, either that's contractual, conversation, firm handshake, whatever that looks like, that should definitely be part of the conversation and the ways of working. Benchmarking and best practices, again, you bring in, you pool all of that collective knowledge, you work together, increase your network. You know, a lot of folks in the room have had a lot of great conversations over the last couple of days. LinkedIn's a powerful tool if used correctly. You know, you can really get a lot of information through a lot of conversations and increasing your own network, even outside of the consultants and the people you pay for. There's a lot of free knowledge in the room. Take advantage of it. That partnership and shared vision, I know I'm kind of jumping around on the bullet points here, but hopefully the conversation is somewhat fluid. The partnership is a critical piece of this. I think we've probably all worked with consultants and even systems integrators or service providers who you were kind of on different pages. It's an awkward conversation. It's an awkward way to work. So what is it going to take to get that true partnership, and how are you interviewing them? What kind of questions are you asking as you engage with these consultants and various providers? Make sure that your vision is clear. You have that candid conversation. For those of you who've gone through an interview process, hiring an employee or staff augmentation, I think in large corporations, we're forced to use behavior-based questions. Sometimes those are a little awkward, and it doesn't get to the meat of what is this candidate bringing, where is their mindset. Same conversation goes with consultants and service providers. And lastly here, provide expertise where internal gaps are. There is a lot of functional expertise and delivery that is expected. So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you can't execute against it, it's worth nothing. So how do you get all of that kind of congealed into an effective vision, strategy, and execution plan? Good project management helps. So there's program and project management on here as well to help with that process. You might have the best strategy, but you don't know how to execute it. That's okay. Bring in, outsource, augment that deficiency. And last but not least is the knowledge transfer. When you're all said and done with this, you should have a really strong knowledge transfer and that trust that they're going to divulge everything, proper documentation throughout the process, and hand that off to you when you're all said and done. So hopefully those are some good points that we can take away. And with that, I'll hand it back over to...
Thank you, Chris. As one of those service providers, very happy to see we made the list of the 6 things to talk about. It's been, I think, 15 years, maybe longer, since I had to lace up the steel toes and hit the floor every day. But I like the idea of trust and alignment on business outcomes. All right, Tony from Koch. I've had the pleasure of working with Tony and Koch Industries and Koch companies for many years. They are seriously ahead on this journey, and it's a great opportunity. Yeah, you're bashful, but yeah, you're ahead in many parts, and so a great steward to learn from. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Matt, and thanks, John. You know, John asked me to take 5 minutes to beat up on technology providers, and I said, I'm all in. I'm all in. I can't wait. Can't wait. No. In all seriousness, no. Thanks for being here. And where are the technology providers here? Just a lot of them. Okay, great. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for being partners. Thank you for participating in SESME and the ecosystem that we've built. And then thanks for being there to unlock Smart Factory. Without you guys, we would be nowhere. Koch is a big company. We've got a lot of diverse operations, and we use all sorts of technologies. So feel free to reach out to me after the event. This list came from a very healthy dialogue yesterday, so this was something that everybody was pretty passionate about. I tried my best to condense it down into these 3 bullets. Again, if you guys have more questions or want more information, let me know. This isn't supposed to be negative. That was a joke at the beginning. It's really to figure out, how do we excel together? How do we create more win-wins? And how do we excel? So the first one here is scalable and simple. This was a key concept that came up a few times. We want to be able to have an ability to self-service our operations. We shouldn't have these complex systems, things that we need to hire software developers and engineers to manage, because we're not in that business. We're manufacturers. We make goods, we make products. We don't want to become a technology company necessarily. Flexible options, so having options that are available that we can modify as needed, depending on the size of the plant, the type of industry, what we're working at. This concept of wrap and extend versus rip and replace, and I'll talk a little bit about it in the interoperability, but we want to be able to insert your ingredient into our recipe. We shouldn't be asking folks to bring us recipes and trying to figure out and parse where it fits and how it fits. I do a lot of my work to just understand where everything comes together. If you guys can work as a team, as an ecosystem, and bring that to our organization, it'll go much quicker. And then capabilities versus tools. So coming into an organization and understanding the people, the processes, the data, the technologies, and having a lens for how you can excel our journey and how you can accelerate what we're doing, being able to speak that language of how this transforms from a capability maturity and not just a tool that needs to be inserted into our operation. The second bullet here was around interoperability. It's a theme of this event. The first is plug and play. So we talked about the technologies that we're implementing should be able to plug into our environments and not the other way around, where you have vendors that'll say, well, yeah, we're open, we can be able to fit into any environment, but they're really talking about their tools are there where we fit into those tools. It should be the other way around. Transparency came up quite a bit. So this is, we need to understand, where does your product fit? You can't solve everything, even though that's a lot of the conversations that we have is, oh yeah, we can do that, we can do that. Of course you can, but where does it fit? And where are the comparative advantages of all these systems coming together? We even talked about transparency and pricing. You know, some leading vendors, right on their website, it has pricing. You don't need to go through all these charades and all the what if scenarios, and you kind of know what you're getting into before spending months and months until you get to that decision, and now, okay, this doesn't make any sense. It's not economically viable. Tied to vision and aligned to decision right owners. So in many of our operating companies, we've got a long-standing journey. It's 5+ years, and it's being either driven at a division level or an enterprise-wide level or within a facility. Having vendors come in where it makes sense and where those decision rights lie is important, and that's going to help you guys out as well. Sometimes I see a lot of vendors will go straight to a site or an engineer. If you can work with those strategic partners, you can get there faster. And then the third bullet here is around cybersecurity. So being able to optimize for risks. So don't come in with a bulletproof solution that actually shuts down the factory. Let's figure out what makes sense for us. And then the final bullet here is we own the data. We should be able to have access to the data and be able to leverage that data because, again, you're an ingredient and part of a bigger recipe. So thank you very much.